I'm going to talk about positive thinking today. This is the first talk I've ever given on positive thinking. Can you believe that? I've been doing this for 30 years. Actually, I talk about it every week, but I don't talk about it quite in these terms. The term positive thinking is one that you've heard over and over, haven't you? I mean, it's a term that has been made popular by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale when he wrote that wonderful book, The Power of Positive Thinking, which I think is one of the greatest self-help books that's ever been written. And if you've not read it, I recommend that you get a copy and read it. The interesting thing about this is that, well, let me go back a little bit. Back in 1987, Dr. Ernest Holmes, had he lived, our founder, started this whole business called Science of Mind, would have been 100 years old. And I was very involved at our international headquarters at that time. And the decision was made out there that we wanted to honor his 100th birthday. And one of the things that they were going to do was they're going to run articles and comments in the Science of Mind magazine every week for the whole year. Comments from people that had known Dr. Ernest Holmes, one of whom was Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. Now, you know, he comes from he was not a very traditional person, but he comes out of a rather traditional discipline. And this was kind of surprising for some people to read the comments that he made. One of the things that he said was, wow, Ernest Holmes, he taught me positive thinking. I said before, that's the kind of thing we ministers like to make up, you know, to tell people, but this is the truth. Look it up in one of the editions of 1987 Science of Mind magazine. Good luck if you can find it. At any rate, Norman Vincent Peale, he was wonderful. But you know, there's nothing that is really new about this whole business of positive thinking, if you will. And as I say, I've referred to it in various ways in virtually every sermon that I've ever given. You've heard me quote a number of different people, but here are some other quotes. First one from Norman Vincent Peale. He says, "Change your thoughts and you change your world." Now, does that sound familiar to you? We have a slogan in the Science of Mind that you'll see printed in various places. It says, change your thinking, change your life. And here's another one, and that is from Abraham Lincoln. He said, people are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. Isn't that neat? And I think if we take that to heart, we begin to realize it, just like it says in the Psalms where we have that statement, as a man, a person thinks in his heart. That is, at the deep emotional level, so is that one's life going to be. And of course, throughout the scriptures of every religious tradition, we have the masters of the teaching telling us that as you think, so you are going to be. So there's nothing new in it. And as a matter of fact, it's so familiar, these ideas are so familiar to us that sometimes we take them for granted. And I think sometimes the term positive thinking is overused. And as a result, misunderstood by a lot of people. Now, somebody will say, well, now you got to think positive. And sometimes when people say that, I want to punch them. Now, I don't really. I just like to say that. It gets people's attention. But, and the reason for that is that what they're saying is, oh, don't think that, don't think that, don't think that. No, something is happening, something going on over here. I'm supposed to stand back and say, oh, no, it isn't happening. I'm going to think positively. And I know if I think positively, it's not going to happen. In the meantime, I break my leg. Or you know what I'm saying. That's not what we mean by positive thinking. We see, like Ernest Holmes says, we recognize what's going on, and we see it as an experience, and then we take action and direct ourselves in a very affirmative way to bring the powers of the universe to the center of this so that we can bring about the transformation that we need, whether it's a broken leg or a broken heart. This is what positive thinking is about. One of the things I want you to understand about positive thinking, it's not something that we do to make something happen. See, it's not something, we do not make something true by just saying it so. And that I want to get very, very clear about. You see, positive thinking is really a redirection of our consciousness, of our thoughts, of our mind process to see what is true, what is possible, what is valid in our lives. And there's a lot of evidence for this in life experience. And for instance, you'll find that in the whole domain of medical practice, health disciplines and all, we know, number one, that worry creates stress. Stress creates imbalances or suppresses the immune system. A suppressed immune system makes you susceptible to picking up diseases and things here or there. By the way, do you hear a ringing? Are we getting a resonance here? Or is God trying to channel through my head? Anyway, but we know that. And when the immune system is suppressed, we have funny things happen in our life. And you know, it's not just the physical that this happens on. It can also happen on the psychological level. Like, you can be told something, and if you adopt that, it can become an integral part of your life. I gave you an example a few weeks ago, maybe last week, I don't remember, about the little girl who was told by her tutor, "Oh, you're never going to learn to read." And she so embodied that idea because this was her authority, her tutor. And she took it in, and that locked in, and it was years of psychotherapy before she got through. They were able to get through and find the source of that. And that was an idea that was a negative idea. It was an idea that was not true. And that became implanted in her. Let me give you another example. When I was a little boy, and I couldn't have been more than about 5 years old, I grew up in a family where there was a lot of health consciousness. My mother was, the right foods and the right behavior and all of that sort of stuff. And we hardly ever had any sweets, any cookies or cakes or candies or that sort of thing in our home. And except at special times, like special holidays or a special event or whatever. And one time we did have some of these sweets around, and I couldn't get enough of them. And my mother came to me and she says, "Richard, you can't eat that. Don't eat that. It's not good for you. And besides, don't you know you have a weak stomach?" You have a weak stomach. I didn't know I had a weak stomach. She says, "Yes, and you eat that stuff, and it'll make you sick. It'll give you stomach aches and make you sick." Well, I think I was like middle-aged teenager before I really questioned that, because every time I'd eat cakes and I love pancakes. I used to make my own pancakes, and I love pancakes. I pour just a little bit of syrup on them, but every time I'd get cramps in my stomach. And I finally questioned this. I thought, wait a minute, do I have a weak stomach? I told myself that over and over. And one day I talked to my mother about it. And she said, "Oh, I just told that to you because I wanted to discourage you from eating that kind of stuff. No, you didn't really have a weak stomach." My weak stomach was gone. I still love pancakes, and I'll make pancakes occasionally, and I really pour the syrup on. I don't get a stomach ache from it. But this is the kind of thing that can happen, and the ramifications of that sort of negative thinking, if you will, or the belief in something that isn't true, can cause you serious problems in your life if you don't do something to handle it early on. And that's a psychological kind of a thing that I experienced. I mentioned the little girl with being told that she'll never be able to read. But let me tell you another one that occurred with me that's purely a psychological thing. When I was in college, I think I was in first or second year college, I took a course in speech. And I really wanted to be able to learn how to give a talk, stand before audiences and present something, whatever. It wasn't so much what I wanted to say, it's just I wanted to say something, You know how that goes. And so I took the speech course, and we were in the very last week or two of the course, and we were all doing our final speech. It was a good part of our final grade. And it was a 5-minute speech. You have 30 people in a class. It takes quite a while to get through all of that. And I prepared. And by the way, it was a positive thinking speech that I was going to give. And so I got up and I gave it, and I felt real good about it. And Dr. Sharp, I'll never forget, College of San Mateo, he came up afterwards and smiled at me. He had
He had a pooched up face, and he goes, Mr. Impressia, I'm so pleased you gave that speech. And then he turned around and told the class all about generalizations and what a great example I was of gross generalization. And he managed to humiliate me and criticize me to the point I didn't want to talk to anybody. I even had difficulty one-on-one for a long while, and I finally got through it. That's a whole other story. And, you know, by now I've given thousands of talks and sermons and so forth over the last 30 years or so. But this is what can happen. We can get an idea. We can accept the idea. It becomes imprinted, and the next thing you know, it controls our life. Now, what does positive thinking have to do with that? Positive thinking is the opposite of negative thinking, and negative thinking was to say, well, Dr. Sharp said this, that, and the other thing about me, and it might be true. You know, the tutor that told a little girl, well, you never going to read. My mother who told me, you have a weak stomach. We do these kinds of things to ourselves as well as we do them to other people, and we accept those ideas from others or from some context within which we're having an experience of life. You know, the success itself, there are a lot of principles associated with success, and a lot of your success depends on how you think about yourself. You know, your skills, your talents, your various attributes. A lot of times you can have them, you can even recognize them to some degree, but unless you believe in yourself, by themselves they're not enough. You have to have a concept of yourself that is going to support the application of the gifts that you have in life, the expression of those gifts. I mentioned recently about a survey that was done among leaders and successful people, 100 or so, all around the world, some of the most successful by some people at various universities. And they found that in this survey, the one thing that cropped up over and over and over in like 85% of the cases of the people surveyed that was thought to be the most important thing that an individual could do in order to be a success in life and a good leader was to have a strong personal development program to build your own self-concept. Now, what is that other than directing yourself toward that which is true about you and turning away from those things that are the limitations that you may have accepted about what you're capable about, who you are. You see, this is the important thing to remember. Positive thinking is not, as I've said before, about making something happen by the words that you're going to speak. What it is redirecting your attention toward what is possible and what is true about you. And what is true about you? You are made in the image of that which made everything. And that is perfect. So you're made in the image of perfection. Now, a lot of people want to argue the fine points of that. I don't care. You're made out of good stuff, is another way to put it. God made you out of the only thing that God could make you out of. You know, if in the beginning was God, that's all. And we're told this in every great scripture of the world. And so, what did God have out of which you were fashioned? But itself. See, Spirit fashioned you out of itself. So you're pretty good stuff. Now we have to start facing up to it and accepting it in our lives and allowing the realization of that to permeate the conscious level of our awareness so we can begin to experience what our possibilities are, what our opportunities are, what our potential is. But potential isn't anything until you do something. So positive thinking is not to make something happen. It's to redirect your thought so you can begin to see more clearly. And what you begin to see is that life, or the universe, put it that way, is benevolent and supportive and loving. And as you begin to grow into that kind of an awareness, you recognize that there is an intrinsic harmony, a balance, and a symmetry to the whole of creation. That intrinsic harmony and balance and symmetry is within you. Think about that. Can you get excited about that? Wake up, wake up. Poke the person next to you. This is a fantastic concept. Simple, You've heard it before, but maybe you need to have it told to you over and over again. And that's what you're going to get from me. The simplest expression of basic principles. Now, what can you do in order to be able to open yourself to a greater experience of that which is so about you? Well, I'm going to talk about two things in wrapping up this morning, very, very briefly. And these are among various practices that we teach about, and we have classes and seminars and all about these practices. And they are these: affirmation and visualization. But before I get into that, I want to talk just a little bit about the way the mind works. You know, we've all heard and studied and learned that there is a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. Well, actually, there's only one mind, but it functions at two different levels of, what would you call it? Two different levels. Leave it at that. And the conscious level of awareness is that level that can think about its thinking. It can rationalize, it can reason, it makes decisions. It is very personal, and we all have that. Like the little girl, or like me, when my mother told me, "You have a weak stomach." My mother was my authority. And I looked at her and said, "Well, gee, I have a weak stomach." What did I do? I imprinted that on my deeper consciousness, on my subconscious. And from then on, I began to experience life as though I had a weak stomach. How often do we do that? How many of you were told by somebody, "You're stupid"? And you looked at that and maybe adopted it, at least for a while. But that's not true, is it? Because the truth about you is that you are made out of the stuff of the universe, and it is all good. So the conscious mind takes in an idea or concludes something by whatever the observation that it goes through, observational process, and makes a decision, and then the subconscious mind takes it, and thenceforth it becomes a pattern in your experience. So how do we break out of that? Well, first of all, we're at a great advantage. Most of the things that are said about us or we conclude about ourselves, I think perhaps all things that are not useful and productive in our life are probably, well, they're wrong. They're just plain wrong. They are not who we really are. But at the deeper level, going beyond conscious and subconscious levels of awareness, there is the intuition. And the intuition is like our connection with the universe. It is our direct line to God. When we think a thought of truth, speak the word of truth. Now, you may not have really felt this, you may not necessarily really believe it, but at least if you have logically deduced it, like, I am in the image of God, and therefore all that God is, I am. I'm not all of it, but all I am is it, expressing. And you may say, yeah, baloney, impression. That little demon on your shoulder, whispering in your ear. But you say it, and you say it. And as you repeat that, that is a statement of truth. It's a truth that you've come to recognize and to accept, even if it's just a cognitive process that you've gone through. It's like you send out a radio signal, and that radio wave expands outward to encompass everything. And your intuitional level is the level that is in contact with all truth. And that's yours. See, that's your atmosphere within the infinite intuition, if you want to look at it that way. And when you send that signal out, the intuition will pick it up, and a coupling or a resonance will occur. Now, you may have a lot of garbage that stands between what you're thinking up here and what the truth is within you. That's why we repeat the affirmations over and over and over. And we begin to see the effect of that when there's a feedback into our conscious level of awareness, and sometimes we're not even aware of it. What we see is life just runs better than it did before. And what's happening is you're getting clearer and clearer. It's not that you're changing your mind. What you're doing is you're opening yourself to the deepest levels of mind, that is the intuitional level of mind that is telling you that, or it's agreeing with the truth that you're speaking about it. And then after a while, what happens is that all of this other stuff just sort of disappears. You don't have to handle each element by itself. You don't have to go out and struggle with any particular thing necessarily. And if you do, if there's something that needs to be done, that will be revealed to you, and you can move forward on that. Do you get what I'm saying here? This is the power of affirmation. You know, and I have preached this over and over and over for years, and a practice, a very, very simple practice. And I'm going to give it to you again today. And I will tell you this, and I'm challenging you at the same time as kind of castigating you, and that is, you won't do it. Most of you won't do it. The few of you that will do it will see dramatic results in your life. And that is, when you wake up in the morning, affirm what a wonderful, beautiful day this is going to be, and how you are equipped to meet whatever circumstances come into your life. That you're made in the image of God, and you have everything that you need to move forward and have a joyful experience of life. Say it whatever way you want. And then, during the day, when all of a sudden everything turns nasty, you know, you walk into the office and you find out that somebody has done this or that or the other thing, or on your job, and you say, oh, God, I knew that positive thinking stuff isn't going to work because look what happened over here. Well, stop at that point and remind yourself, I am a God child. Everything that I need is within me right now to handle any circumstance of life. And I'm going to approach it with love. This may be a tough thing, but start trying it. And when you go to bed at night, and this is the time that I can't remember the last time I forgot to do this. I may forget in the morning sometimes because I wake up and I want to get the coffee on and, you know, and so forth. But I do it every night. And that is, when I go to bed at night, I make an affirmative statement. As I lie down this evening and go to sleep, my body comes into balance. All of the elements come into harmony with each other. My mind clarifies, and through the night, I am revived and rejuvenated so that I wake in the morning ready to meet the new day and the wonderful experiences that it holds for me. And I tell myself that every night before I go to sleep. A lot of times, if I'm not sleeping too well, I'll spend a lot of time praying, and I'll pray for people. And some of you I pray for, and believe me, you need it. Or I'll pray for the whole congregation or the church or whatever. But I always end by doing that little affirmative practice of mine. So I give you an assignment. This next week, do that. And I further will add, I want you to report back to me and tell me what the effects are in your life. What are the results? Now, the other thing that I want to talk just very briefly about is visualization, just a little bit. This is the mental rehearsal kind of thing, the visualizing, you know, create a scene in your mind that implies the fulfillment of whatever it is that you want to experience. I rummaged around last night and I thought, you know, I would like to have a source, some comments from somebody that's outside of the domain of the spiritual environment or context, beyond, outside of metaphysics or a church or a religion or a center such as this, just to show that this is something that's really happening more and more. And what I found online was perfect. I think it's perfect. And there's some comments by a guy named Brian Namath, and he's referred to as the basketball guru. And he has a website, and if you're interested, the website is on this sheet. I'll just leave it up here today. And these are all taken out of context, and of course you realize I take only what I think I can use. It's going to support my position, right? But there's different sections, and out of the section entitled Believe, he says, always believe in yourself. If you think you can't do it, you aren't going to. When shooting, that is shooting for a basket, believe it's going in and it will have a better chance. And then under mental imagery, he says this: mental rehearsal. This is almost as important as practicing the action itself. The brain patterns during mental rehearsal of an action are the same as those when preparing for the action before the motor skill is selected. So the more you mentally rehearse a shot, the quicker and easier it will be to prepare to carry out the shot. And we say these kinds of things in various ways all the time, don't we? But do we really do the mental rehearsal? Do we do the visualization? Do we see ourselves having accomplished something or receiving something or acquiring something that we really want? Creating that scene in our mind that implies the fulfillment of whatever the desire is. Do we really see that? And there's a whole process involved in doing that too. But that little bit could be life transforming for you. And the last thing is under a section entitled Proper Preparation. He says, most importantly, learn to visualize what you are going to be doing in the game. And this is the game of life I'm talking about. Always see yourself being successful. We're going to be offering classes again this September. I'll be offering a basic class. Some of you may want to take that. It could be your first time taking it. It could be your fourth or fifth time. And some of you I see out there, I know have been through the basic ideas, the foundational studies a number of times, and you get something more out of them every time you take them. I certainly have. And I'm the facilitator of the class. And Glenda will be offering a class, and I don't know what else. She's going to be offering a class called Self-Mastery, which has a prerequisite of the foundational course. So watch your emails and look at the announcements that we make here carefully and the flyers that we put out, because you may want to enroll in one of these courses. It can be a life-changing experience for you. But don't forget your assignment for next week. Now let's have a short prayer, shall we? As we relax into this moment, we remind ourselves that each of us is made in the image of that which made it all. And there is nothing other than that. That is God. That is the infinite. That is the principle. That is the presence. Call it by whatever name is comfortable for you, but that is what you are. Not all of it, but all you are is it in expression. And with this we can honestly say, and take these words that I speak right now as your words. There is one life, one mind, one love, and that is God. And that life, mind, and love are what I am right now. And in that realization, I know that there is everything that I need in order to be fully expressed, to make the decisions daily that I need to make, to take the actions that are necessary for me to fulfill myself according to the design of my own divine pattern. I accept this in my experience right now. I allow it to outpicture in every area of my life. I am so grateful that this is so. I know that it is so. I accept that it is so. And together we declare, and so it is.